Good morning to everybody. I presume everybody can hear and see the screen. This is quite a rare occurrence now, given that CeeD has gone largely back to doing in-person presentations. Today we're going to hear from Terry Hogg, the Innovation Systems Team Leader at Scottish Enterprise, who's going to talk to us about the scope of the second Zero Emissions HGV call and how you can apply for and hopefully succeed in winning the funding. Once Terry's finished, we'll take some questions before handing over to Jill Simpson from Msip, who's going to tell us about another fund, the Msip Innovation Challenge 2, which has been designed to support businesses interested in EV charging. Jill is standing in for Sarah Petrie, who is travelling, but I think Sarah is on this call and will try to answer questions as best she can to support Jill. Do use the chat box to post your questions for Terry and the Msip folk, but we'll tend to answer them at the end of the presentations. First, some housekeeping. As I said before, thanks for joining us. Session will be recorded. Please do mute speakers, switch off cameras, use the chat function, but enjoy the event. And as I said, we'll assume that everybody on the call is happy that we acknowledge that you're there by sharing the presentation. First, though, I ought to tell you a little bit about our sponsor. That is the programme of events that CeeD's developed for the Advancing Manufacturing Cluster Builder Initiative. Many of you will already know about this, and if that's the case, now's the chance to, as they say, prevent the dog from barking with a juicy bone, or go off and make a cup of tea. But don't worry, you're only 5 minutes away from the main feature, so please bear with me when I tell you a bit about CeeD and about a new project that we've got called Msip. So what's Cluster Builder about? Well, we know now that today's economy runs on knowledge, and most companies will try and capture and spread ideas and know-how. And one way of doing this is to form what is called a community of practice. A community of practice is a group of people who are informally bound together by shared experience and passion for joint enterprise. So people in these communities will share their experiences and knowledge in free-flowing creative ways that foster new approaches to problems. And I think this is how CeeD works, and it's the reason why CeeD membership's continuing to grow, certainly over the last 18 months while I've been employed by CeeD. It's because we make it possible for our members to share knowledge and find help that's nearby to them. The Advancing Manufacturing Cluster Builder programme is also, I think, a community of practice. In this case, the common purpose is to support the recovery of manufacturing in Scotland by making available to Scottish SMEs, and at no cost, expertise, know-how and facilities available to them. There are 12 projects in the Cluster Builder project, and these offer support to businesses looking to do things such as automate processes, create physical three-dimensional objects directly from computer design files, visualize their operational processes, apply computer systems to manufacturing services, supply chains, products and processes, and even build and test prototypes. Some of the projects are regional, but others can support businesses no matter where you're based in Scotland. CeeD's created a page on our website. You can see the address here, advancingmanufacturing.co.uk, where you can find information about each project and find examples of how Scottish SMEs have benefited from working with the 12 Cluster Builder AMCFs. We've also put on the website some work that we finished doing with Scottish Enterprise not so long ago on continuous improvement. There are some stories here of how Scottish businesses are adapting to changing circumstances whilst continuing to invest for growth. So I'm hoping here that now you're here, some of the perhaps the Cluster Builder initiative can support some of you on the webinar today who need help in realising the innovation that you have in mind. Lastly, before I go and hand over to Terry, I want to tell you about another project which is called Msip. Every manufacturer creates waste, but of course the profile of the waste produced will vary enormously depending on where the materials have come from and what the business is that has created it. It could be in the form of inert recyclables or perhaps hazardous material, but all waste producers need to dispose of this waste for processing and transformation, and it's often at great cost. Map is about helping waste producers manage their waste and qualify their data collection and reporting systems, and generally demonstrate a duty of care for the material and take responsibility for reporting the flow through the system. So CeeD supporting phase 2 of the Map project and the SME Topolytics. Map technology is being made available to Scottish manufacturers, and we're looking for potential participants who are interested in working with Topolytics to improve the Topolytics, quite a mouthful, Topolytics algorithms. So we're looking for waste producers that generate operational or post-consumer waste, recyclers and brokers that move and transform waste materials, and regional authorities that want to get involved in the project. If you're interested in finding out more about how Map can help you in your plans for a net zero, do drop me a line and I'll pass it on to my colleague Tony, who gives his apologies but couldn't be here today. So it's now time for the main act, so I hope you're ready, Terry. Everybody on the call, we've allocated 90 minutes to this webinar. I'd like to leave some time for Jill and Sarah at the end of it. If you have questions, we'll take them at the end of Terry's presentation, but do remember you can use the chat function as well, and we'll monitor them on that. So with that, thanks very much, and over to Terry. Yeah, thank you.
Perfect, thanks Patrick. Yeah, so good morning. As Patrick said, I'm the Innovation Systems team leader at Scottish Enterprise, and really just going to take you through a few slides to describe the current can-do zero emissions heavy duty vehicle innovation challenge that we have live at the moment. Really just touching on the aims of the call, touching on its scope, looking at particular focus areas we have, looking at this project and business eligibility, take you through some of the evaluation criteria, and also link into the wider support offering that's available, including our colleagues at Msip, who you're going to hear from in a minute. So first thing to say is this is a partnership project. We're very fortunate to have Transport Scotland supporting us with the finances and the operation of the fund, the call, and the larger fund that we'll touch on. So yeah, so we're very pleased to be working on this Team Scotland approach. So in terms of the call scope, so this really dovetails nicely into a focus area that Scottish Enterprise have, a national programme in zero emissions heavy duty vehicles, and the call is actually addressing all of the segments. Some of you may be aware we ran a similar call last year, and we focused exclusively on the on and off-road aspects of heavy duty vehicles. This is now opening it up into covering on and off-road again, but opening up into rail, marine and aerospace applications, so much wider scope this time. And the aim of the call, if I'm being really honest, this is a bit of a carrot. I feel like what we're looking to do is to flush out Scotland's best innovators, the most impactful innovation that can address the challenges that zero emissions heavy duty vehicles are facing, and impact positively on that decarbonisation agenda, but also, and importantly for Scottish Enterprise, Scottish Government and Highlands and Islands and South of Scotland Agency colleagues, impact on economic growth and jobs ultimately. So what we're looking to do is to flush out the best projects. It is a call-based approach, so we will only be funding the best projects through this mechanism. There may be additional support for others, depending on the nature of the projects. And it's a short exercise, so we'll provide a short bit of funding, so 3 to 4 months, for you to detail and your designs, conduct technical, commercial feasibility. The scope of that R&D feasibility is quite wide, but what it's looking to do is to flush out the best projects and give you a small piece of funding, short time to really kick the tires on the proposals, build the internal business case to take it forward. So ultimately what we're looking to do is work with you to then support you with larger projects, look at developing, demonstrating, commercialising the prototype solutions. And as I'll touch on in a minute, we're looking at whole vehicles and key subsystem innovations as well. Ideally, what we'd like to do as well is lever in larger funding packages if we can use this. And in fact, we've already got examples from last year where that's looking pretty positive actually in terms of being able to lever in larger funding packages from out with Scotland as well as inside Scotland. So in terms of the key focus areas that we're looking at, it's zero emissions at the tailpipe. So things like biofuels aren't in scope at the moment in these calls. So technologies that would be in scope would be battery electric, hydrogen fuel cell, got air in there. We actually made the classic innovation mistake of specifying the solutions almost the battery electric and hydrogen. And we're pleased to be challenged and someone come up with an air-powered concept. And the question marks there is yeah, it's open. What we're looking to do is have technologies that don't contribute to emissions and climate impact. So yeah, we're looking at whole vehicle innovations. So if you're out there and you've got radical designs in terms of taking this zero emission heavy duty vehicles forward, we're really keen to hear from you. But also we recognise that there are key subsystem innovation challenges, and we've touched on those on the challenge web page, but there's this may seem in many ways it is quite niche in terms of the application area, but when you start to drill down into the key subsystems, it really starts to open out in terms of the opportunities there. So we're looking at things like battery systems, for instance. Can you reduce cost, improve the performance of that key component? Equally, fuel cell systems are constantly evolving, and there are real opportunities to optimize that system in its own right. The charging systems as well. Again, there's real challenges just now in terms of the infrastructure costs of electrical vehicle charging, for instance, and anything that can address that. And that's both the system cost, but also connection costs is quite important there as well. And there's a real task to be done in terms of optimizing hydrogen fueling and storage. And I'll touch on a few examples that we had from last year. And overall, energy management is important always, but particularly with battery electric and hydrogen, when storage and range becomes an issue, how you manage your energy in that whole system becomes more important. And linked to that, and cutting across all of those areas, use cases and applications will be lightweighting, again, linked to the energy management. If you can reduce the weight of your vehicle, then that obviously has a beneficial impact on the energy required to transport it. So in terms of the project eligibility, this is R&D feasibility projects, and you really need to clearly articulate how you're addressing the challenge brief, and that again is all online. We're looking for businesses who are, it might seem obvious, but we are looking for businesses who are developing innovations and looking to commercialise the intellectual property developed through them. We did have a couple of inquiries in the previous call and around companies looking to decarbonise their own fleets and apply it to their own business and decarbonise but not commercialise the solution. So it's not to say that's not a good project to do, but this fund is purely focused on that development and commercialisation of technology, and it's important to recognise that. Yeah, short projects, it's actually 3 to 4 months duration and 30 to 50k in scale. 100% funded, which is quite unusual. So that's the carrot, if you like, and we need the projects to be complete by the end of March. So it's short and sharp, and there's particular public sector spending obligations that we have that are driving that. But we it's proven from last year it's a good way to flush out and fund in a limited sense these feasibility projects. In terms of the business eligibility, the can-do element is an element that's used to indicate this is open to all businesses, not just Scottish enterprise businesses. So businesses in the Highlands and Islands area and the south of Scotland are open. We are running it on behalf of the Can-Do Team Scotland collective, if you like. You must be a registered company, and it's companies only. So if you have academic partners and interested, they need to be in as suppliers. And also, there's details on Scottish Enterprise web pages. You need to be committed to the Fair Work principles, things like the real living wage and commitment to implementing that. It's running, I think, about £10.90 at the moment. And again, it's a single applicant, as I mentioned there. We don't have the contractual structure and around this one to cope with multiple partnerships. So it's a single applicant, and if there's other folks involved, they need to be a supplier or subcontractor. Usually eligible project costs. We've actually, for those of you familiar with the Smart R&D scheme or Innovate UK funding, they're all pretty similar, and they'll kind of go back to sort of state aids definitions of what research and development are. So usual sort of direct costs in terms of your employee wages, your materials, any subcontracted costs need to go in there as well. And there's a flat rate model in Innovate UK just to make it a little bit easier to define your overheads, but also on the flip side, the processing of them, it's a flat 20% rate if you're looking for a contribution, and that 20% is the overall labour cost that you have in the project. And important to note as well, we again to speed up the evaluation process and contracting and sort of claim process, we have a requirement, like the SMART applications do, of having an accountant's report, and that is a eligible project spend. For companies interested in applying it for this fund, just to bear in mind, and this is all in the guidance as well, that will be an additional cost element you'll need to factor in. So in terms of just briefly touching on these, because I want to leave some time for the Q&A. These are the application sections and evaluation criteria there that you'll see. Again, all this is online as well. So yeah, the project proposal obviously needs to fit with the challenge brief, and the more it aligns with that, the better. Project impact, we're looking at Scottish economic impact. So that's Scottish jobs increase, turnover increase. Appreciates early days in a feasibility project, but we are looking for economic impact. So we will be looking for you to make some indication of what the impact of this project will be. The innovation aspect, we're looking at the degree of innovation within your proposal. What sort of competitive advantage is it giving you in the marketplace? Linked to that, the commercial potential, look at the scale of the opportunity and your potential to exploit. So really probing how strong that value proposition is. How much do you know about the potential routes to market? How convincing is your commercialisation proposal? Got a section in there, business team and resources, really standard application stuff. We're looking to you to demonstrate that you have the personnel that have the experience, the knowledge, the credibility to take not only this project forward, but the subsequent commercialisation. And if there are gaps, that you recognise those and that you have a plan in place to develop and address the gaps. Project plan, really looking at the robustness, the clarity of the plan, the confidence in the plan, and also your appreciation of the main project risks and your approach to managing those through the project. The section in there in terms of the feasibility costs, just really looking at the justification of the costs and the value for money in there. And the final one's the need for support. This is all public funding, so there's a section there for you to describe the additional impact this funding will make. What would happen if the project funding wasn't put in place versus what happens if the project is supported. So just touching on last year, just to give you a little example, I suppose, and maybe stimulate some thoughts and ideas. Last year, as I say, it was restricted to on and off-road applications. So we had a few whole vehicle solutions, battery electric bus in there, and a couple of hydrogen powered trucks. But the vast majority were in on the subsystems. As I said before, we had a really interesting air-powered drivetrain system, limited in scope in terms of what it does, but quite a novel, nice project in its own right. We had a few looking at the EV charging system that I mentioned before, with established players looking at optimising the sort of software aspects of their charging system. We had a new entrant, an existing company involved in mainly involved in installation, looking to move up the value chain and identify some areas to improve the system, and with someone looking at utilising existing electrical infrastructure and tapping into that to provide I suppose a low cost electrical connection option to the charging system. We had a few in the hydrogen fueling system, again all probably related to the conundrum of managing pressure, temperature and volume within hydrogen storage and distribution, and individual subsystems that look to improve that, basically allow you to store and refuel hydrogen systems in a more speedy and efficient manner. We had a few in battery systems. We've got some really innovative battery electrochemistry being applied to on and off roads for the first time, we believe, with an existing battery company whose commercial product looking to optimise the manufacturability of the process, and with projects looking at hydraulic systems. This is an area that is ripe for optimization in terms of that, back to that sort of energy management aspect. And if you can manage the hydraulic energy requirement in a more efficient manner, then that has a big impact on the overall project. And with some really innovative control systems looking at battery electric and fuel cell, and again how to really optimize that. A lot of the systems just now are off the shelf and shoehorned in terms of control aspect of it. So there's a big opportunity to use good control theory and customization of control systems to battery electric and hydrogen fuel cell. So just a few examples just to give you, I suppose, an indication of the range of projects we've been looking at previously. I should say that I think there's only one that we're aware of that's dropped off. We fully expect this is R&D, it's feasibility. There'll be a high drop-off in terms of projects we're working on at the front end that are actually commercialised, but we've been pleasantly surprised, and only one of them's dropped off so far, and we've got folks working with the companies on taking those projects forward. And that links into the wider support. So yeah, this is a feasibility, but we're looking to work with you through this process and identify potential funds to support the development and commercialisation downstream of this. And there's a few listed there that are currently live. We again have a partnership approach. Transport Scotland have supported a zero emissions mobility fund, which we are running for them. Again, these are this is open to all Scottish businesses. It's particularly focused at the moment on and off road, but we're hoping to widen that out through the appropriate governance structures. It is focused a lot on the manufacturing deployment aspect of projects and technology readiness levels as the parlance is used. But as I say, that's a significant fund in its own right. Another significant fund is low carbon manufacturing fund as well, and again, not going into too much detail, but that will support R&D and low carbon products, but also can support capital equipment as well, so things like investment in processes, investments in premises. Those of you familiar with old regional selective assistance, it's that type of capital support. So some significant additional sizable pots of funding to support larger R&D projects and the commercialisation process. And we also have a wealth of other support through ourselves and Highlands and Islands and South of Scotland agencies as well. And I've provided a link there for those of you interested, and we'll circulate these slides. There's information on all the current live funds that we offer, but there's also a nice database you can search for funds dependent on the nature of your project as well. And in terms of business support, wider business support, including the grant funds, there's a nice easy tool, Find Business Support, recommend as your first protocol, has all the business support available through the various economic development partners and local authorities as well. And through this project, what we're looking to do is to link in to a developing Scottish innovation support system. And this slide represents that. There's a lot. Key point is here is within zero emissions heavy duty vehicles, a group of us working to make it easier to understand where the various innovation support assets can support Scottish companies like yourself. We appreciate it can be quite a confusing environment, but what we're looking to do through this project and others is provide a seamless link into that by working with our innovation specialists. We understand the nature of the project, where you're trying to go, and we can bring in the relevant expertise, be it academic expertise, be it some of the test and demonstration infrastructure you can see listed there, and also linking into colleagues like our Michelin Scotland Innovation Park with their developing test facilities, but also their additional support, which you're going to hear from Jill in terms of the fund, but they've got some significant innovation space in terms of that commercialisation process as well. So idea about this is we're working as a collective to demystify, simplify and improve the ease of accessing the right bit of support at the right time for your project. So just in terms of the timeline for the call then, so yeah, a little bit of time still left. So dead short, easy application form. We've designed it with that in mind, and it's in accordance with the small scale nature of the project. Short form, short application process and evaluation process. But the deadline, and this is a drop dead deadline, 20th of October at 5 PM, and we will notify the results fairly quickly. And I've just noticed I've got the March 22, that should say March 23. So short and sharp, as I say, we're starting early December, finish March. So that's a 4-month period that you've got available to conduct and spend. And next steps to finalise the talk I'm going to give and open it up to questions. Just encourage you, just visit the challenge webpage. We've made it hopefully fairly clear in terms of what we're looking to do, the scope, the brief. There's links to particular challenges and also links to other more detailed knowledge of where the kind of technology roadmaps are going if you're interested in that one. So I would encourage you to access that, review the challenge, download and complete the application form, and send any forms and any queries that you have as part of that process to the email address there. That's me, Patrick, so I'll just come out of this and stop sharing and take any.
Well, thanks very much, Terry. I've left my camera off for the moment. I've been monitoring the chat box as we've gone along. There's a few people offering their services, a couple of introductions already made. Before I start reading through some of these questions, forgive me if you already covered it, and that's because I have been looking at the chat box. We're trying to encourage collaboration, obviously, within CeeD. You do encourage collaborative projects. Are there rules as to support in terms of funding and how that can be divided up and shared between collaborators?
Yeah, I mean, it's you know, there are examples where collaborations are treated in a more sort of formal joint contractual way, but this, I did touch on it, this particular fund, it's a single applicant, single contract. So any partnerships, any relationships in this project from a contractual perspective need to be as a sub-supplier to that main applicant, Patrick. So yeah, we do definitely encourage collaboration, particularly when you're looking at routes to market, and it's just recognised that often you need a wider partnership to commercialise. But just to be clear, for this particular project, whilst we do encourage partnerships and collaboration, this is single applicant, and any partners that you have need to be in as a sub-supplier, Patrick. So hopefully that's clear.
Yeah, hopefully. Thanks, Terry. I guess final or follow up to that question is that the subcontractors would be bound by the same terms and conditions as the single applicant in terms of the grant funding from Scottish Enterprise, or is it a relationship with the single applicant?
It's a relationship with a single applicant. It's up to you to deal with your suppliers. We would be the only caveat. There's obviously some checks business probity checks that we would do, and there's a current Russian sanction checks that will be done, and that would be undertaken for any suppliers that was mentioned on that as well, Patrick. But over and above that, contractually, it's a relationship between Scottish Enterprise and the single applicant company.
Okay, thanks, Terry. Okay, some questions. So Gary Robertson, Gary, has asked about biofuel. He says, why is it not in scope? But looking further down in the chat box, Andrew has answered that pretty much everything's in scope as long as it's zero emissions. So what can you say about biofuel, Terry?
Oh, not a lot from a policy perspective. So this is driven by Transport Scotland. So the current position is they want us to look at zero emissions at a tailpipe. So the biofuels aspect isn't in there, and that's due to a guidance by Transport Scotland. Not my area of expertise, Patrick, but I believe that the UK government sort of follow a kind of similar position on this as well. That I think what they're looking to do is address decarbonisation through zero emissions, but perhaps look at where that can't be done to then look at biofuels. So I think it's an evolving policy position is where I'm coming from. So I think, for what it's worth, I think there is huge scope in biofuels as an intermediary stepping stone, and maybe even in some limited way as a viable solution in its own right. I think there's good evidence, I've seen good engineering evidence that, for instance, biogas from anaerobic digestion can actually have a negative carbon impact, for instance. But as I say, this is purely introduced by the guidance from Transport Scotland, who at this particular time are focusing this particular aspect of the fund on zero emissions at the tailpipe.
Okay, thanks, Terry. Gary, does that answer your question? I guess my immediate question to Terry would be, so can I make an application or not? But Gary, do you want to come on to the call, and or are you happy with the answer? Can't hear or see Gary. If not, I'll just move on to the next one. James asked, is the call open for agriculture, off-road applications? Neil followed that up by saying forestry applications. David Gray asked about marine applications. I think Andrew answered a couple of those questions in the chat box, but he didn't say anything about marine. So over to you, Terry.
Yeah. So on the first one, agriculture, yeah, that's definitely in the I would say the off-road aspect, and with that, forestry would definitely. So those two applications would be in scope for the heavy duty use cases. So yeah, marine is in scope. So the last year we restricted it to on and off road, but now we're opening it up to marine, aerospace and rail. Patrick.
Thanks. Neil has asked, he just missed the start of the conversation, who is the best person to speak to regarding assistance with suppliers, charge points, units? I'm not sure if you want to come on, Neil, and amplify what you meant by that question. I'm going to invite people who've put things in the chat box and other people to just say a couple of minutes about what they are and how they can help people on this call. Is that you, Neil? I can just see coming in. Yes, it is.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, thanks. Yeah, it was just, I've got a couple of projects hot to trot, and we need to install some pretty heavy duty charging points. And it was really just signposting at this stage to see who best, is there a supplier network? Because as Terry touched on earlier, everything seems to be moving so fast in this arena. Hopefully prices are coming back the way, but that depends on manufacturing supply and the general economy. But there's a wide range of prices, and I just wanted to kind of lock into a couple of contacts I can push forward and start to source some of these charge points.
Thanks, Neil. Yeah, it's not my area of expertise, but yeah, we are working with others. So I do recognise through the projects we're involved in that the charging infrastructure is a particularly tricky area at the moment. So if I'm right, what you're looking for is just some guidance, some knowledge of that area. I think what I would suggest is I can maybe have a conversation with you. after this, Neil, just understand the requirements a little bit better. But it may well be that there's a couple of thoughts I've got in my mind. There's linked to Patrick's network, we've got an organisation called Urban Foresight who are working in this area as well, and also some colleagues at Transport Scotland who are actively involved in supporting the charging infrastructure, and they've got good knowledge, and in fact they're involved in a project. We're working with the Scottish Fire and Rescue Service at the moment where we're sourcing 150 kilowatt charging systems, so they may, without over-egging their potential support and knowledge, without speaking to them, there's a couple of options there, Neil, that might be worthwhile. So if I can get your contact details, or if you've got mine, we can hook up after this, if that's okay.
Yeah, no, that would be brilliant, Terry. And as I say, the increase in capacity, I was looking at 120 kilowatt hour chargers, but you know, by the time we saw some, probably 150 is the key, and so it's just to discuss things like that. But yeah, I'll make contact and progress. Thanks very much, appreciate it.
Thanks, Neil. Cheers.
Thanks, Terry. Thanks, Neil. Right at the bottom of the chat box, there's a lot of people offering their services. This is quite a long webinar. We will have some time for people to come on and talk about that directly. David Gray says he has a concept design for zero emission commercial workboats, needs to investigate and harden up some areas of the design with a view to prototype build next year. Is this in scope? I'd also ask the question why Terry thinks about that, in the sense of, do you need any help in terms of the design and prototyping? And are there people on this call, including CeeD, that might be able to help you? Get in touch. But Terry, these boats, are they, and the work that he's envisaging, are they in scope? Was it in scope?
Yeah, so it sounds like it is. I missed whether or not it was the powertrain, the power source was zero emissions. Assuming that is, then what boats, and looking at some of the design elements of the concept would certainly fit within the R&D. So battery electric. Thanks, David. Yeah, that does sound in scope. Yeah.
Okay, David, happy with the? Need to ask any more? Need any more? Oh, more messages coming in. Okay, thanks to that. So Aaron, you shared some information about a marketplace for EV charging infrastructure, an EV charging infrastructure ecosystem that's launching at the end of October. Do you want to spend 2 minutes telling people on the call about that? 1 minute. Do you want to come on and say something? Tell us some more.
Yes, thank you very much for the opportunity. So we're launching charger.io end of October. It will basically be a marketplace for different stakeholders in the EV charging infrastructure space. So bringing together people who can list their sites, charging point operators who want to list their demand, both for services, locations, products, and also for EV charging, EV infrastructure investors, and also for every service provider and equipment manufacturer to list their products and services. We will be online end of October. The domain name to look for is charger.io. So that's CHRGR.io. Thank you.
Thanks, Aaron. A big question at the bottom from James, sitting in his car. It's an interesting webinar. We've got Sarah on a bus and James in a car. Would Transport Scotland be open to offer up areas of the trunk road network to test a net zero highway maintenance concept? Now, you've got some skin in the game here, James. I think you told me yesterday. Do you want to come and can you answer that question verbally, where you're sitting? Maybe not. Terry, can you answer that question for James?
I can. It's the honest answer. I mean, it's a question for Transport Scotland. It's an interesting one, so I can take if there's any details that you've got. I'm not seeing the chat there, Patrick, but if you can provide some details, I can certainly run it past Transport Scotland colleagues and make a connection there to
well, you can see James. You can see James in the window. I don't know if we can hear you.
Hi, James. Sorry.
There you go.
Terry, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. You're breaking up a little bit, James, but go for it.
Right. Yeah, part of my business is in highway maintenance, and we ended up sort of maintaining about a third of the southwest network. So I'm really keen to adopt or transfer over where we're going with the atomic tractor. devise municipal vehicles and highway maintenance vehicles. So given our experience on highways, even a 20-mile stretch in the southwest, somewhere to, on occasion to test these vehicles, or to, work towards a name of net zero maintenance. Because I know they've a few, they're trialing gritters, that are electric and such like. So, and I think there's been a hydrogen fill point put in at Palmadee. I might be wrong with that, but I think that's what's happening. So they're obviously, and I know guys at Transport Scotland, Hugh Gillis and Donald Morrison. So I don't know if those types of guys would be the guys to speak to.
Okay, that's really interesting. To be honest, this hasn't come up, but I think linked into that sort of ecosystem, feel like the test and demonstration infrastructure is really important. So, yeah, not one that I've asked Transport Scotland specifically about. What's in your gift to support in terms of the infrastructure, but I'll certainly take that back, James, and get your contact details. See if we can at least have a decent conversation around what you're looking at. Again, it's no for me to sort of suggest what they can and can't do with the roads, but it does seem a sensible thing in terms of, right, well, if we could facilitate some form of demonstration before going live. And again, I'm pretty sure, I know, for instance, there's various kind of trials on down south and various technologies being supported of sort of CAV work up here, going over the Forth Road Bridge and stuff as well. So it's, there is precedent there. I'm just genuinely not sure what, from a policy perspective, Transport Scotland's kind of view on this is yet. So, but definitely something worth picking up, James. So if we can maybe agree just to get the right folks and maybe arrange a wee call just to explore this.
Thank you, Ted.
Thanks, guys. Joe's put something in the chat box as well about one of the CeeD members. Volvo has a test track offering CeeD as a facilitator for anybody who'd be interested in doing something like that. I'm pretty sure the centre. I know Harriet Watt's on this call, but and I always mispronounce the name of the centre, but there's a Centre for Road Freight Transport at Harriet Watt, and I'm pretty sure those guys were once talking about a test track for the electrification of road freight. So I think there may be a number of opportunities. What I will do at the end of the call is everything that is in the chat box that is an offer of support, as I think I did with the last time we ran this event, I'll reach out and tell people about what is available to them and share the individual offer with you all. I'm conscious that with no other questions coming in, we do have Jill and Sarah, and we've got a Q&A at the end of that as well. There's been a bit of overlap, I think, in between the two calls. Perhaps, actually, I'm going to let David ask his question first, and then I think we'll invite Jill to come in and give the presentation. David's final question is, can a single company apply for 2 different project fundings for different parts of a project? And Janie has put the Centre for Sustainable Road Freight. Thanks very much, Janie, and their contact details in the chat box. David's question, though, Terry, did you get that?
Yeah, I did. So, there's nothing to stop a company applying for 2 different projects. And in fact, with one company who was successful in that last year. This is an R&D feasibility call. So what we're looking to do is support innovative projects that can develop and commercialise. So you could apply for 2. You could put 2 applications in, but they would need to be very clearly 2 different projects. So splitting the one project into sub projects wouldn't really be in the spirit of what we're trying to do, David. So I don't know if you want to come on and maybe just appreciate. Maybe we could have an offline if you're not comfortable talking about the detail of it. But hopefully that's clear that what we're looking to do is to flush out, projects that can be developed and commercialised. So if there are 2 different outcomes in terms of the development and commercialisation, then fine. But if it's the one project that's been broken down into multiple components, but ultimately that will be the one development and commercialisation project, and that wouldn't be in the spirit. So hopefully that's okay, David. If you can maybe let us know if that's okay, and if not, happy to chat about it just now, or equally if you want to follow up. Okay.
Okay,
Yeah,
thanks,
yeah,
Terry.
thanks, David. Let's do that.
Well, thanks for that for the time being, Terry. Hope you stay on for the rest of this, maybe some questions at the end. So,
Will do,
Jill,
Patrick.
I can either share my screen or you can share yours. Terry has stopped sharing. You can just share yours and invite you to talk about the MSIP call.
Thanks, Patrick. If you're okay to share, that would be great. That'll give one less thing for me to worry about and focus on. Perfect. Look, there we go.
Yeah.
So hi everyone, and thanks very much for giving us some time today on the webinar. So if you click the next slide, Patrick, I'm wondering if it's still got Sarah. It has. So as Patrick's mentioned, I'm filling in for my colleague Sarah Petrie, who is currently on this session but on a bus. So for in the challenge of connectivity, while getting a bus across Scotland, Sarah is on the chat function and will manage any questions that come up in the chat and give me a bit of support with that. But I will talk you through what our MSIP Innovation Challenge 2 is today. And I should say, so I'll introduce myself. I'm Jill Simpson. I'm the Marketing and Communications Director at Michelin Scotland Innovation Park. Next slide. Thanks, Patrick. Oh, can I control it, Patrick? Can I click? No, I don't think I can. Can you click to the next one, Patrick? Oh, there. Oh, there we go. So first of all, what is the MSIP Innovation Challenge? So it's our second challenge. We've previously done one, and this is Innovation Challenge 2. It's a funding call to provide up to £25,000 to companies to test or demonstrate innovative new products, processes, services, or business models at the Innovation Park, so at MSIP. It's a very simple process, a single stage application. There is a link in the slide, so when you get the slide, you can click on that here word and it will take you to the application form. But what I will do is I'll share the link to the flyer in the chat. And Sarah saying she can't see the slides. I can see them, so hopefully if anyone else is struggling, maybe put in the chat that you can't see the slides. And yes, so I'll share in the link in the chat, sorry, the link to the flyer, and all of the relevant information is in there. And another important point, applications close on the 17th of November at 11 o'clock. So there's still plenty of time, and what we're doing just now is promoting amongst industry in our network to get as many applications as possible where it is relevant and meaningful within the next 6 weeks. If you go to the next slide, thanks, Patrick. So what are the additional benefits? I've mentioned it is grant funding up to a maximum of to a maximum grant amount of £25,000 and up to 75% of project value. There is no maximum project size, so it can exceed that, but we will fund to a maximum of £25,000. And there is a minimum, so the minimum project size is £6,600, and again up to 75%. And more information and examples on how that funding could be split and what it can cover is in the FAQs document that we'll share in the chat as well. We've got a variety of assets where you can enable and test and demonstrate for your project. So we've got a private road network now I've written some facts down here because these aren't, as you can imagine, at the top of my head, 1,700 metres of private road network within the Innovation Park. We've got a 12,000 square metre campus. And we've got 3,000 square metres yard space. So lots of big external spaces where you can test and demonstrate your product and technology. We've also got a series of unoccupied buildings currently that can be utilised, and we've got a skills academy that the physical space has just been complete. And as well as a space to develop skills for your technology. There's also access into different skills routes as well, and some resource there. And then, of course, we've got our car parks and electric charging technology as well. Another clear asset, so our Msip Innovation Labs, which will launch this winter. They're a series of different flexible spaces for companies to locate on a flexible lease option, and one of the opportunities that comes with being awarded one of our Innovation Challenge 2 grants is access to those innovation labs. And again, more information on and details on those is in the FAQs. We are doing this in partnership, so you see some logos at the top of the slide. Census and the Data Lab and Dundee City Council are all partners of this Innovation Challenge. And what that does is open up a lot of additional expertise and support that the successful grant companies can access. And then there's some additional funding opportunities available as well. So one specifically we've pulled out there today is available to non-Scottish organisations via the Scottish Inward Investment Catalyst Fund. But again, there's a lot of other funding options that might complement what we're offering. I know Terry mentioned that we're all working together, so it's all about collaboration from the funding network side of things to help companies and enable that journey to net zero. And Sarah works extensively with a huge network of different partners across Scotland to maintain an open database that is up to date, that we can signpost and help companies make that a bit easier to what is most relevant to you. Next slide, thanks Patrick. So what is the challenge focused on? The challenge has two focuses this time around. So the first one on this slide is demand responsive transport mobility as a service. There's a couple of examples there. So providing a rapid response to personal transport, development of novel data management solutions. Some tangible examples, so transporting rural communities to city-based employment, so a commuter route from rural to city. Transportation between Msip and the city centre in Dundee. So we're about 4.5 miles from the city centre in Dundee. We're right on the outskirts of the city, so there's an opportunity there. Or providing commuter routes and links between Msip and Dundee and Angus College campus. As another example, we because we do have our Skills Academy based at the Innovation Park, and linking that to the other parts of the college network. And then data analysis and management for fares and scheduling and things like that. And I know Urban Foresight were previously mentioned by Terry, so there was a project that they were working on looking at how people attend events at Msip and how we track that and how we make that option more manageable for those individuals and offer different mobility as a service tools to do that. So lots of different ideas, and what I would suggest is if you've got an idea, a product or technology and you're not sure if it fits, Sarah is the absolute person to go to. So I'm going to say that now, not me, but happy to be there as well and champion your idea. But Sarah will know exactly what would fit or could help you scope it out to see where it lands within that space. And then next slide, thanks Patrick. So the second focus of our Innovation Challenge is, I'll let Patrick just flick to the next one. So it's electric vehicle charging. And again, a couple of examples put on the slide there. So development of newer smart EV charging technologies, ensuring the just transition and access for all. The accessibility of electric vehicle charging, so it's quite a topical one right now. A wireless charging option, use of captive electric vehicle charging for off-grid provision. There's so many ideas that could fit into this focus of the challenge, and again, Msip and the infrastructure that we've got is ideally placed to support projects in this area. So it's a really good focus for our Innovation Challenge too. And again, any projects that you've got that you think may fit, I would recommend you have that conversation with Sarah to tease it out a little further if you're ever unsure. And next slide, thanks Patrick. So the biggest question, what is the eligibility criteria? So this is the one that we always get asked, who is it for, who is it aimed at? So there's a few musts. Projects must be led by companies. They must be relevant to one of the two areas that I've just spoke about, and they must deliver test or demonstrated activities at MSIP. So they do not have to currently be a tenant. So that's a really important one to flag. We do have a lot of tenants in this space, but companies applying do not have to be a tenant. But the project that they're looking at must be delivered at MSIP, accessing some of the facilities that we've got. And then there's a can, so projects can be collaborative. I think we would encourage that. I think that it's something that Scotland is exceptionally good at, and something that we are a prime example of. So as long as the project is led by a company, there can be different collaborative partners and funders there. And again, there's more information on that and some examples within the FAQs, and Sarah can talk through that in more detail on a one-to-one if required. And next slide, thanks Patrick. So another one that's important for us to talk through is how will proposals be assessed? There we go. And so there's a lot of information on this slide, but it gives you an idea of what the scoring measures will be. So how well does the project address the challenge? You know, it must fit absolute criteria. How innovative is the proposal? So we are looking for new and unexplored areas. You know, we want to encourage disruptive innovation and build on what's already out there. So the more innovative, the better. How robust is the delivery plan? So is it tangible? Is it realistic? Does the team demonstrate the appropriate experience and capabilities? So, you know, your background and who the team is and the fit for the area and focus of the challenge is really important. Is the budget appropriate and realistic? So I've mentioned there's no maximum value on a project, but there is a cap on how much funding can be given. And is that breakdown in your application realistic? That will be a key component of how we score it. Does the project have commercial potential? So can it be scaled? Can it be applied in the real world once it's tested and demonstrated? And will MSIP assets be required to utilise it? So I've listed, you know, various assets that we have at the Innovation Park, and we want activity. We want our assets to be utilised. It's why we're doing this and supporting industry as well as progressing the transition to net zero. So that will be a key factor in how we assess the applications. And then one final one, I think it's just dropped off the page, but what is the potential for follow-on funding or investment? So I've previously mentioned we have an extensive network of what the funding environment looks like across Scotland for businesses, and we'll be looking at what potential is there to tap into more of that through the projects that we fund. And yeah, and then what is the timeline? So we're currently, the funding call is open. It opened in September. The deadline is the 17th of November, so we've got a good time frame to scope out projects, have those conversations, spread the word and get your application in. The results will be notified by mid-December and all contracts will be in place by mid-January. And an important one to flag is that all projects must start by the 30th of April. And we've put or as negotiated, so if there's any confusion or uncertainty around that, we can have a conversation, but ideally all projects will be in place by that date. And then that's everything that I've got on the slides to talk about. I know that there's, and Sarah's probably been buzzing on the chat. She's currently getting off her bus. I've just realised it's now 11 o'clock. So happy to try and take any questions that we've got just now and do my best. I know Sarah will be picking up on the chat as well, but there is Sarah's contact details. And so there's Sarah, she's at the tram stop now. So, you know, multitasking, all in the life of a busy innovation director. But please do get in touch. Please do speak to us. We want to, you know, to have those conversations and help and support you get an application in. So, yeah, that's everything from me, and happy to answer anything I can.
Thanks, Jill. haven't seen any questions coming in the chat box as I've been trying to multitask, sometimes unsuccessfully. In terms of contracts, are you using a standard form of contract that people will be familiar with? Is it something that you can share? Intellectual property ownership, for example, would come to mind if you were a university. I don't know how many universities we've got on the call, not many, but what can you tell us about contracts?
Yeah, so it's a very simple, I suppose I should cover the application stage as well. So it's a very simple online application, one stage process that then gets assessed by the panel. In terms of the contract, it's a very standard contract. Sarah could probably give a bit more information around the intellectual property aspects of that. And I understand that from the academia side, it's quite important. So it's the same contract we use for Innovation Challenge 1. And there was nothing flagged in there in terms of any concerns. But yeah, Sarah's answered it. I didn't want to speak out of turn, but yes, I am correct. So we don't have any interest in taking the IP ownership. Everything sits and remains with the company. Our role in this is to help progress industry and to support companies to test and demonstrate their products to take it to the next level and the next stage. So that is our pure interest in it. No interest in IP, so that all remains with the company, and the contract would state that as well.
Okay, thanks, Jill. And Sarah has been tapping away. I think she must be a secret gamer, the speed at which she's able to get these things in the chat box. There are no questions, actually. There must be some. Excellent. There's still 30-something people there. Terry's still here as well. You can all read what Sarah's writing. Is there any comment that anybody wants to throw in? Is there anything for the future that people would like to see, for example? I'll throw that one in as a wild card. Everybody happy with what the support and for funding for these innovations? I don't know. Help me out, guys. Oh, Aaron, do you have to be a tenant of MSIP?
No. So, no, you don't. We've got our facilities there for all of the successful companies that get our Innovation Challenge 2 grant. You can test and demonstrate at MSIP, so use our physical space for that, but you don't have to be a tenant and you don't have to become a tenant to do so. I'd mentioned the innovation labs as a physical space that will be provided as part of the grant if required. So if companies do require some space, we have that, and they're flexible small spaces, and they're single and doubles, and I think it's around, I'll probably get it wrong, but 70 square meters, something like that. I mean, they're not huge spaces, just enough to do what's required. And there will also be a shared maker space within the innovation labs that will give people. Yeah, there we go. Look, again, I don't know why I doubt myself, Patrick. It is 70 square meters. But yeah, so the shared maker space that's currently all in development, and that will have different tools and materials that companies can use, right? Because again, we recognise that there are barriers to some companies being able to test and demonstrate, because some of this equipment's really expensive. Access to physical space on a short term is in short supply. So we are trying to take away some of those barriers, and that is all available and accessible, but there's no obligation for companies to take the innovation labs. If they're based elsewhere in Scotland, that's absolutely fine. What we ask is that the project is tested and demonstrated at MSIP. And again, the details of what that could look like could be chatted through with Sarah in a bit more detail.
I think if I was Jill or Sarah here, I'd have said to Aaron, do you want to be a tenant at MSIP?
Well, or why aren't you a tenant at MSIP? Yeah, exactly. Come and join us. It's a fantastic place to work. And Dundee is the best city in the world. But as a Dundonian, I might be biased.
And are you open for business? Can people become tenants now? I think you can.
Absolutely. Yes. And if anyone is wanting to be a tenant, come speak to me. We've got various different spaces available depending on need and demand, and we're currently trying to track demand as well. So if there's something that we don't have that companies want, we are looking at, because we've got 1/3 of our spaces undeveloped, so we're looking at what do we do next, what do we offer, and some of the smaller units is where the demand is looking like it's sitting. But yeah, absolutely speak to us or if you know anyone looking for space, send them my way.
Okay, and then Sarah's responded telling us about Aaron's company. Talking about opportunists, there's another opportunist that I haven't spoken to for a long time here, David. Good to see David Corn on this call. He says he's wondering if there's a limit on the proportion of cost for a subcontractor. Speaking as a potential subcontractor, I assume that is addressed to Jill and not Terry, because I think we covered it earlier with Terry's call.
So I'm looking very quickly at the FAQs because there is examples in the FAQs of this. So what I'm going to suggest is, I think there is, Sarah will be able to correct me, but I don't know what that limit is. Here we go. Sarah might be quickly typing with her fingers right now. I can't remember. We're a well-oiled machine here at MSIP. So maybe I think it was 20 or 25%, Sarah, and I see 25% on the FAQ, so I'm going to stick with 25% as my final answer. And again, maybe the ones that we can't answer, what I would encourage, David, come and have a chat with us. And we could give you more details as well. But yeah, Sarah's saying shameful. At least Sarah's got an excuse that she's on a tram. I'm sat at my desk with all my notes, and still had a wee bit of a panic there. But yeah, 25% is the cap.
Okay, Joe's put something in the chat box. It's really for Terry. Joe, why don't you come on and ask that question?
Morning, Terry. Good to see you. I was just wondering whether if we went to some of the tier 1 vehicle companies and asked them for their supply chain gaps, whether we could weave that somehow into the challenge. I know it's probably less R&D and might have a kind of commercial link, but I can see people like Volvo and Alexander Dennis, etc., maybe being able to add something. Thoughts on that?
I think you're spot on, Joe. We mentioned this challenge call, but also the Zero Emissions Mobility Innovation Fund. And I'm never one to oversell what we're doing, but certainly the intent is, because it could have been, just take the additional funds in and boost our general innovation grants. The opportunity here is to do exactly that. It's down to resource and working together, and I think that's back to the ecosystem, I feel like, because it is the one value chain, it is the one market. So I think exactly if we can start to get, so the challenge is quite high level at the moment based on technology roadmaps and what industry is saying in general, but if we can move towards understanding potential customers and routes to market and their requirements in more detail, as you'll appreciate, there's some Scottish players that we're already supporting and looking to try and get them to open up in terms of that engagement, but equally talking to folks at Innovate UK and the Advanced Propulsion Centre and just being a bit smarter about the collective knowledge. But I think you're absolutely right, Joe. If we can get to a point we're able to give visibility of what the market looks like, who the tier 1s are and what their specific challenges are, then that's certainly the direction of travel. But as you know, it's devil's in the detail. It's easy to say these things, but actually getting the details sometimes a bit challenging. But that's certainly what we're intending to do, Joe.
We'll work with you. We'll help you. We can park up all the trucks next to each other and buses, etc., and do a meet the buyer almost. That would be quite a good thing. An innovation meet the buyer event.
Yeah,
come and do it at MSIP as well. We've got good space to do something like that. So yeah, speak to us.
Plenty room for buses.
Oh, plenty room. Double deckers as well. Yeah.
Remember, Volvo going to bring you or rock back $1 billion truck with, if we were all standing on each other's shoulders, we're not reaching the top of the tires. So that one might be a little bit bigger.
Okay.
Patrick, could I just sorry for jumping in there. I don't think I did cover the percentage supplier costs specifically that David raised. Is it worth us touch that? Because we don't have a limit as such on that supplier, but what it would be reflected within the sort of justification of the cost and the sense of it, if you had something like 90% of the cost as a contractor, and they start to question whose project is it. So there's no explicit minimum maximum, but it's just the practicality of whose project is this, who's developing and commercialising IP, and it just at those levels that Jill talked about as well, it starts to look like someone else's project. So it would be picked up in the evaluation criteria, but there's no explicit minimum or maximum on that.
Okay, so we're getting to the silly point of the webinar where I don't know if David's made a comment or is swearing at me. That's David Corn again. Sarah's saying that Joe's truck won't fit through the gate. I think Joe had more in mind that it would drive over the gate and not worry too much about that. I can see Michael has come on with his video showing us his office. Is this you wanting to say something, Michael?
Well, it was only a small thing, but on the road vehicle side, it's easier to get links into appropriate companies, whether it's hydrogen or batteries. I just wondered from Terry whether he has any instinct at all for what's happening on the marine side, whether you can facilitate good links there as well.
Yeah, hi Mike, good to see you. At the moment, I would need to say it's probably an earlier stage, Mike, in terms of our knowledge of that. In all honesty, we are engaging with the Scottish Maritime cluster folks who have really good links in there. And also there's a chap at Innovate UK called Neil Ryan who runs a Clean Marine Demonstration Challenge. So we've flagged it as this. We would like to do exactly that, but in all honesty, Mike, we're kind of at an early stage in that. But more than happy to pick up on any specific requests you've got and see if we can help out, Mike. But yeah, I would hope that through time in those 4 segments that we're able to provide that level of detail and clarity. But it's just going to come down to who's got the knowledge just now and who can help us acquire it, Mike.
I'd have said Innovate UK in a previous life. I definitely attended some calls. It was quite a big group working on marine propulsion, Mike. Joe's put something in the chat box about Denshi and Herriot Watt project with Thames Clipper. I believe if David, you're still here, David Corn, you were part of that project. I think that was more about battery management rather than zero emissions per se. But okay. What are we now? 12 minutes past 11. Hope everybody thought this was worthwhile. Send lots of applications to Terry. In the past, people have sent me applications and I've referred them on, but probably best that you don't do that, albeit in error, and send your applications for the zero emissions course straight to Terry and others straight to Jill and Sarah. Robert Palin's commented on his company working on a fuel cell and wind-powered cargo ship. As I said, all of those things I'll put in an email, which I'll circulate to everybody who's been on this call and who didn't make it. So hopefully we can get some kind of sharing ecosystem going. And I think I've already commented that there is a company that's not here, whose name I can't remember, but I will introduce people interested in EV charging to them, because I know they've been doing something up in Aberdeen. Should follow up and say, Terry, your hand's up.
Yeah, Patrick, it was just to say, just on the sending me the applications, actually all the information's online and the email address is on the application form as well. So it's really important that you send it into that inquiries@ScotEnt. Okay. All the information's online, so it's just to indicate that, Patrick. Okay. And while I've got the chance, if you don't mind as well, I should have done it when I kind of did the wee presentation. But just wanted to thank you and Jane and the CeeD team for pulling out all the stops again and helping us out to organise this event, Patrick. It's been it's gratefully received, and thanks so much for being so proactive and helpful with this. So I just wanted to send my thanks to you and the team.
Oh, thanks, Terry. And thanks also, Sarah's put something in the chat box about that. It's always good fun to do that, and it gets us some additional contacts that we can try to make. If you like that, there's not too many people left on the call now. If you like these kind of events, just go to the CeeD events page.
Links in the chat room, so they can all find it now.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, if no more questions, thanks all for coming on, and we'll see you at another event. And take care until then. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thanks,
Patrick. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.